Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Pittsburg Law Enforcement Center to tonight's forum focusing on the race for the Kansas Senate District 13. My name is Blake Benson. I'm with the Pittsburg Area Chamber of Commerce. We're the coordinators for tonight's event. First of all, I want to thank our two candidates for making time for us, Richard Hildebrand, Nancy Engel. Appreciate your time, appreciate your willingness to serve the residents of District 13, and we certainly look forward to hearing your views on several different topics here tonight. Also, a big thank you to the City of Pittsburg for allowing us to hold the facility and hold the event in the Law Enforcement Center here in Pittsburg that allows so many more residents and voters an opportunity to hear directly from the candidates your views on several issues. The format is pretty simple. You both will have 2 minutes to provide an opening statement. You'll have 2 minutes to answer questions, and then you'll both close with 2 minutes of closing statements. I've got a yellow card here that will give you an indication when you're within 30 seconds of your time being up, and the red card does mean that time is up, and we would ask that you observe that. So the format, again, will be opening statements, then the candidates will each answer 3 questions that they received in advance, and then we'll go into a segment that you'll answer questions submitted by members of the public, and we'll take as many of those as we have time for this evening, and then again you'll wrap up with 2 minutes of closing statements. So any questions on the format before we get started? All right, with that, we will let the challenger, Ms. Engel, go first. Ms. Engel, you have 2 minutes for your opening statements.
Thank you. And thank you to the Chamber for hosting this forum. Thank you for being here to the audience. And I want to say thank you to those out watching live and those that will watch later. This is a critical time in our country, and it's very important that we all be informed about the issues and the candidates. So thank you for taking your time this evening to join us. I was born and raised here in Pittsburg, Kansas. I'm a retired attorney. I lived on West 4th Street and called a little bungalow my home for over 35 years. That bungalow's not there now. The firehouse is. So anyway, I'm a graduate of PHS, PSU, and after I got my law degree from Washburn, I returned and practiced law. I was an assistant county attorney. I had my own law practice, and I started out as a legal aid attorney, circuit riding 10 different counties. So I know Southeast Kansas. I love Southeast Kansas, and I love the people of Southeast Kansas. I have several reasons why I chose to file for this office, but one of the overriding reasons was that I'm getting the feeling that Southeast Kansas is being overlooked or taken for granted. It's like our state has become a state of 5 big counties, and we're a state of 105. And I think Southeast Kansas needs a strong voice to bring attention to us and to our needs. The second main reason was I'm very concerned about the discord in Topeka, the petty politics that keeps big problems from being addressed. So that's the reason that I'm running, and I'll look forward to discussing other questions with you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Engel. Mr. Hildebrand, 2 minutes opening statements.
Thank you, Blake, and thank you for everybody for showing up. You had your opportunity to watch 2 debates tonight. You guys chose ours, so we appreciate it. The vice president candidates are debating tonight, so hopefully we have some viewers at home watching as well. And thank you to the Chamber of Commerce for hosting and the City of Pittsburg. I want to thank my beautiful wife Marisa for being here, and the Pitt State Republicans for showing up in their support. They really help out a lot during campaigns and are out in the communities. I've lived in Southeast Kansas, this area, for 47 years. Moved here when I was 4, haven't left. I am a small business owner. Have a small insurance company in Baxter Springs. I understand what business is like. I'm currently your state senator for District 13. I currently serve on Transportation Committee, which is very important for Highway 69. I also serve on financial institutions and insurance, and I serve on Fed and state. And then I'm also on some special committees that meet during what we call interim committees. I'm on a Bob Bethel Oversight Committee, which oversees our Can Care program. And then I'm on the Foster Care Oversight Committee. And then I was also just recently appointed to the Economic Recovery Committee. So I look forward to this forum tonight, and thank you for showing up.
Okay, thank you both. We will now go into a series of questions that the candidates received in advance. First question will be answered first by you, Mr. Hildebrand. And the question is this. There's no doubt that issues surrounding the COVID-19 pandemic will dominate the 2021 Kansas legislative session when it begins in January. One topic is likely to be the state's role in a public health crisis like the one we have experienced this year. In your opinion, what should the state's role in a public health crisis like the one we've experienced this year? What role should it play?
The only role it should play is to advise and assist local government. That's it.
Okay. All right, short and sweet. Ms. Engel, 2 minutes.
First, I want to wish everyone that's suffering with this disease a speedy recovery and give my condolences to those who have lost someone, one of their loved ones. I want to make it clear, COVID-19 is not the flu, and it is a serious public health problem. I believe that the federal government should have taken the lead, but they didn't. And I had an old boss at Boeing that said, well, we are where we are, now what are we going to do? I think that the state operated on the best information they had at the time, and it kept changing. It's still changing. We are now in a structure where the local governments have the decision-making power. I would have no intent of changing that, but I do hope that the local officials are taking this really serious because about how they are trying to stop the spread. Being in southeast Kansas, we have less resources, hospitals, clinics, doctors to respond. And if we don't stop the spread, we are quickly getting close to our capacity to address this. And I want this not to end up where people who need a gallbladder surgery have to go to Tulsa or Wichita or whatever. So I support the local decision-making, but I urge them to take this seriously and really watch what needs to be done on the local level to keep us safe.
Okay, thank you both. Our next advanced question is this, and it will be answered first by Ms. Engel. Every state bordering Kansas has now expanded its Medicaid program, citing the advantage of a healthier population along with increased federal funding. Locally, Medicaid expansion would generate more than $11 million in new health care spending in Crawford County alone, with both Ascension Via Christi Hospital and the Community Health Center of Southeast Kansas, each estimating they would receive an additional $2 million per year. What is your opinion of Medicaid expansion in Kansas, and would you support it?
I am for Medicaid expansion, absolutely. I think it just makes common sense. There's been some theories that it's going to raise our taxes. It's not going to raise our taxes. I look at it like this. We sent our hard-earned tax dollars to Washington. And people think it's a complicated thing, but it's not. It's like we all went together and bought a big apple pie. And in 2014, they came to Kansas and said, here's your piece of the pie. And then Governor Brownback, and since then, my opponent has said, no, we don't want our piece of the pie that we paid for. And our piece of the pie, our money, goes to states like New York. Now, that doesn't make any sense to me. That we have lost 3 hospitals in southeast Kansas. And since 2014, we have refused over $4.3 billion, not million, $billion in our hard-earned tax money that was there to come back. In the 13th district, annually, we refused $20 million. Like you said, $11 million in Crawford. Now, it's a 90-10 match. 90 out of the federal, 10 out of the state. But there are studies that have shown the economic development, the jobs it creates. I believe it's over 100 in Crawford County. They will more than pay for that 10%, and you will not have economic development in your area if you don't have good health care to show to people coming in to look to relocate.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Engel. Mr. Hildebrand.
Thank you, Blake. Do I support it? No. Will we have an opportunity to vote on it again? We don't know. Supreme Court's getting ready to have a hearing on it to see whether or not it's constitutional to throw it out. One of the things that was interesting, my opponent keeps talking about compromise and things like that. There was a compromise to get Medicaid expansion passed this past session. All we had to do was pass the value of them both amendment. That didn't get passed because 0 Democrats would vote for it. They thought that the right to an abortion was more important than expanding Medicaid. Because that, Medicaid expansion did not get passed in Kansas last session. On top of that, if it does get passed, how's Kansas going to pay for it? We're $1.4 trillion. We're going to have $1.4 billion deficit in fiscal year 2022. My opponent said it's a 90-10 match. The total cost is estimated to be $1.2 billion. Federal government's going to pay 90%. 10% of that's $120 million. Put that on top of the $1.4 billion deficit. How are we going to pay for it? $1.23 is what we get back for every dollar we send to Washington. Kansas taxpayers are not sending money to Washington and sending it to New York or sending it to California. That money is not sitting there. We are $26 trillion in debt in the U.S. federal government. We are going to put more debt on our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren to pay it back. Thank you.
Thank you both. Third advanced question will be answered first by you, Mr. Hildebrand. As you both know, the completion of the Highway 69 project has long been one of this area's top priorities. If elected, what assurance can you give the residents of District 13 that you will make the continued expansion of Highway 69 a priority? Mr. Hildebrand.
Thank you, Blake. I'm just going to keep doing what I've always done since I've been elected. That's been one of my priorities. And one of my priorities since I've been elected was, just like everybody else, I get tired of money being robbed from the Bank of KDOT. Every year, money gets robbed from the Bank of KDOT to balance the budget. These last 2 years have been no different. I actually am the one legislature in the state of Kansas to introduce a constitutional amendment that would permanently close the Bank of KDOT in Kansas. Unfortunately, that did not get out of committee and we did not get to vote on it. However, when we were debating the transportation bill that later became the Ike transportation bill, I offered an amendment that would lock that Bank of KDOT permanently. 0 Democrats voted for it, and as a result, that amendment died. So now the state can still rob from the Bank of KDOT. I will keep doing those things and keep pushing for Highway 69 as long as I'm in the legislature and as long as it needs to be built. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Engel, same question.
I don't think I'm going to tell you anything you don't know and you haven't known for years. The expansion of a 4-lane US 69 all the way to the Oklahoma border is absolutely essential for the economic development potential of southeast Kansas. Now, Richard just referenced the Ike bill. That's the Eisenhower Legacy program. And it's an improvement. It's a 10-year program whereby projects go in the pipeline, and you can't, until you get these out of the pipeline, you can't put new ones in, which, as I understand it, is an improvement because people can't leapfrog over you just because they have a powerful senator someplace. Now, having said that, that doesn't mean that we can let up our guard. We need to be vigilant. We need to be persistent. We need to keep on the ball, keeping that that project for US 69, but we also have K7 that needs help. So I will do that commitment. I have that commitment, and I will do that. On the other hand, my opponent back in 2018, there was Senate Bill 109, had $60 million earmarked for delayed highway projects, of which Highway 69 was one, and he voted no. He also voted against originally setting up the task force that came up with the Ike bill. So I'm a little concerned about what your commitment really is. I know I'm going to be on it like a duck on a June bug.
Okay, thank you both. All right, we will now move into the section of tonight's event where we will answer, or you will answer questions from the public. And Ms. Engel, you'll go first. Serving in the Kansas legislature means frequently working with those that may have differing priorities. Citing specific examples, tell us about times that you have reached across the aisle to work with the other party and or those you may not have agreed with.
Okay.
2 minutes.
I haven't served in the legislature, but let me tell you about the majority of my career. The majority of my career as an attorney, I negotiated contracts. And obviously, when you start out, you're not in agreement with the person across the table. And I learned that the most important thing you can do is learn to listen. Listen to your counterpart. What are their wants? What are their needs? Find common ground and come together. I can do that in the state Senate. I worked for a state senator previously, and I worked for former Governor John Carlin. And both of those office holders were renowned for reaching across the aisle and bringing consensus. I'll do that. I learned a lot of valuable lessons back in those days when I was on the governor's staff and on the senator's staff. I know how to do it, and I will do it. And I will not let, just because it's somebody else's idea, go away if it benefits Southeast Kansas and the people of the Southeast Kansas. If it's a Republican idea and it helps, I'll be there to support it. I'll sign on, and I'll do whatever I can to help get that passed. And I would expect the other side of the aisle to do the same.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hildebrand, same question.
Thank you, Blake. Before I answer the question, I just want to respond a little bit to what my opponent called me out on. Senate Bill 109 was a budget bill, and that budget bill spent more money than what we actually collected. So she just admits she's going to deficit spend and vote for deficit spending again. The $60 million that she's saying is put in, that's not accurate. That was $60 million extra they weren't going to steal. So to put this in perspective, if I come to your house and steal every piece of furniture that you have and leave you with nothing, and the next time after you've went out and purchased brand new furniture, I come back and leave you the TV, are you going to be happy? No. It's the same thing. Quit spending money and quit robbing the bank of KDOT and leaving them crumbs and saying, look what I've done, just to pass a budget that's going to deficit spend. Working across the aisle, I don't have to know how to do it. I've already done it. I sponsored or co-sponsored 5 bills this last session with Democrats. 4 of those bills passed or are now law. One of them was to protect the women that have been assaulted or human trafficking, that if they are in a lease, they will be able to get protection from that lease so they can move, so they're not forced into a place where a violent offender can come and catch them and do more harm to them. I've also did the RAWS zone, expanding the expiration date for the RAWS zone. That was bipartisan support. Shared parenting plan was a bipartisan bill that I introduced. And then there's a resolution urging the Kansas Corporation Commission to lower utilities. That was another bipartisan bill. Another bill that I worked with very closely with some Democrats in transportation was driver's license fees. Our driver's license is getting suspended or revoked for past fees. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. Mr. Hildebrand, the next question will be answered by you first, and we're gonna test both of your knowledge about the 13th district. As you both know, the 13th district is a diverse and, geographically speaking, a large district, spanning from Galena and Baxter Springs through Pittsburg, even to parts of Fort Scott, even a portion of Lebec County. So it's a pretty wide district. Tell us how the priorities of the 13th district differ or vary within the district itself. Again, a large district, very diverse. Tell us how the priorities of the 13th district differ within the district. Mr. Hildebrand.
That's kind of a interesting question because every community, even within a county, is different. Their different desires, culture is a little bit different. Pittsburgh's more of a college town, so you have the college that you have to make sure that you are taking care of or looking at, making sure their interests are being taken care of. Cherokee County, for instance. One of the things that we do have is we're on a border, so we border Missouri and Oklahoma. Property taxes are a big issue. Sales taxes are a big issue because you can go across the state line and get things a little bit cheaper. When you go and tag your car, it's more expensive in Kansas than it is in Missouri. I know in Cherokee County, a big part of population is decreasing. A lot of it is because people are working in Kansas, driving from Missouri because it's cheaper, or vice versa, they can get a better job somewhere. So those are a little bit different, but they're all the same. So we just have to coordinate everything that we can and do what's best for all of District 13.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Engel, same question.
Okay. I agree that with my opponent that there's differences even within a county. But what we have in is not just metropolitan areas. There's also agricultural areas in the 13th district. So there's, within the counties, you have a metropolitan area like we have here in, well, it's a city, he called it a college town, where you've got an influx of people coming in on a regular basis and rotating out during the summer, etc. And that brings with it a different dynamic. So obviously, the requirements and the needs of Crawford County, Pittsburgh is different. But Crawford County also has agricultural areas, just like Cherokee does. The border issue has been a border issue for decades. It's always been come down that, yeah, you can go you could drive across the line and get cigarettes. You could drive across the line and get liquor. You can drive across the line and get gasoline cheaper. But that's not what I would want to focus on. What I want to focus on is the commonality, the issues that bring us all together, like health care, education, child care for our working parents that need a place they can feel safe to leave their child while they go to work. I believe that the different areas of the 13th district have more in common than they have as differences. And so, yes, I would listen to each area. I would be there. I would hold town halls in each of the areas to find out what's going on and listen to them. But we need to not focus on our differences, but on our common values.
Okay, thank you both. Let's shift the focus and speak for a few minutes about education. Given that education makes up the majority of the state's budget, give us your take on the current state of education in Kansas and what changes you would like to see related to education in our state. Ms. Engel, you'll answer first.
Okay. I think it's an absolute shame that the Kansas Supreme Court has to force the Kansas legislature to fully fund education, which is a constitutional requirement of their jobs. I believe that we have a good educational system, but we can have a better educational system if we fully fund it and we look at the curriculum, making sure that every part of the state has the ability to teach that curriculum in their locality. I still believe that there's an unfairness in the way the formula is, so that certain parts of the state, teachers get paid more. You know, if you teach in Blue Valley up in Kansas City, you got a good job. If you're teaching out in a rural community in western Kansas, or some of the ones here in southeast Kansas, you're going to have a hard time attracting the best quality or the most effective teachers to your area. So I think that we have a good education system. I think there's things we could do better to fund it. I would like to see, and this is a personal thing for me, I would like to see more history and more civics taught. I think we have to have that kind of education to have an electorate that can fully participate and know what they're voting for. I remember the history classes and the civic classes, and I think they're not as adequate as they should be now.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hildebrand, your thoughts on education?
I think we are very blessed in southeast Kansas with our school systems. I think we have some of the best school systems in the state and in the area. But on top of that, one size does not fit all for all students. All students learn at a different rate. They learn differently. Some adapt better and learn better by doing courses like STEM or VOTEC. Some are more into the books. And I think that local school boards should have the ability to look at those resources and do what they can to educate the children and each child individually as well as a group.
Okay, thank you both. Let's switch gears and talk for a little bit about business and economic development, since you both mentioned it as priorities of yours. And Mr. Hildebrand, you'll go first on this question. In the week ending September 19th, the U.S. Department of Labor says more than 17,000 initial jobless claims were filed in the state of Kansas, and according to the Kansas Department of Labor, more than 100,000 Kansans of working age still remain without a job. The state's unemployment rate currently sits at 6.9%, even though locally we are a little bit below that, fortunately. But the question is this: what policies will you support as a state senator to help businesses recover from the pandemic and get Kansans back to work? Mr. Hildebrand.
Thank you, Blake. Well, one of the things we have to realize is when businesses were shut down, those businesses didn't have income coming in, but they still have their property taxes and other taxes that they have to pay. If the government is going to shut down a business, they need to make sure they have a way to reimburse that business, or at least give them a grace period on their taxes. We're not giving businesses a grace period on their taxes. We're saying we shut you down, but you still have to pay the piper. That's going to hurt. They have to come up with those taxes and still focus on reopening. On top of that, one of the things I did as a legislature, and one of the things I'll still continue to do, is fight rules and regulations. The type and the cost of rules and regulations on a business to start up is just astounding. It's amazing how expensive it is. And then once you're up and running, to maintain those rules and regulations so that you're in compliance, it's a cost burden, and you have to dedicate resources, time, and money to make sure you're following the rules and regulations of our state. And we're one of the largest rules and regulations regulated states in the country. And I introduced two bills last session. One would sunset, or it would expire, all rules and regulations after 5 years. If a rule and office or department wanted to add a rules and reg, they had to prove that it was going to be what the burden was going to be on the population and on the business. And then the second one was a right to work, where the rules and regulations, if you had to go for a license or fee or something, the same thing. What is the reason you have to have that license and pay that fee to do your job? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Engel, same question.
Well, I think we have to be honest about this. The Kansas economy isn't just reflecting COVID-19. It's also a result of 8 years of the Brownback tax experiment, the lack of money to invest in infrastructure and other types of things. I have some experience on economic development. Some of you that are older will remember EcoDevo, and it first came into trendy during John Carlin's administration when aircraft, oil, and ag all hit the skids at the same time. And we had to be innovative and try to attract new businesses. It's not an easy thing. Every election year, we say, oh, we want jobs. We got to get jobs. We got to get jobs. It's hard work. When you want to get someone to come in and set their business up in your area, they're going to look at a lot of things. It's a comprehensive package you have to be able to give them. You got to give them a good education system. You've got to give them health care. That's quality. You've got to have community spirit where they can have entertainment, they can see their family in that community. You've got to have resources, water. You've got to have infrastructure, transportation to get their products to market. There's a lot of things. And a thing that we haven't talked about is broadband. We have got to expand broadband into rural areas and also into underserved urban areas. That is just a fact of life in being a part of a global economy, and it's not going to be easy. And to say that I have all the answers, I would be lying to you. I'm telling you it's going to be hard, but we can do it, but it's going to be step by step.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Engel, next question will be answered first by you. Due to the pandemic, the Kansas Department of Labor is currently providing some unemployed Kansans with an additional $300 per week in benefits on top of their regular unemployment benefits. Some business owners are increasingly concerned that this could actually stifle an economic recovery and that it may provide a deterrent to some employees returning to work. What is your opinion on the additional $300 benefit, and how long should it be offered? 2 minutes.
Well, I find it hard to believe that someone can live on their unemployment and $300, and that makes them not want to go back to a job that pays $11 an hour or something. You know, I think we have to look at who's getting that $300. And I don't know how long. I don't know how long the pandemic's going to last. I don't know how long the economic drain is going to be. We have to keep an eye on it. We don't want it to become another reason for people not to go to work. But if they had a job, you know, it's not like they weren't working. They had to have been working for them to be getting the unemployment. It's not like that they were just sitting at home watching TV and then they went in and applied. They had a paid job and they qualified for that unemployment. I don't believe that $300 is that kind of an incentive. Maybe for some people it is, but I couldn't pay my mortgage. I couldn't put food on my table with just unemployment, with just straight unemployment when there's no jobs to go and apply for. So I'm not concerned about the $300. We need to keep an eye on it, though.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Engel. Mr. Hildebrand, same question.
Thank you. Just to clarify, that was $300 per week, not $300 per month.
Correct.
Someone making $11 an hour wouldn't bring home $440, but that would be their gross pay after they paid taxes. It'd be more like $300. So you put that on top of the $400 and some max weekly UI benefit. That's a pretty big incentive to stay home. What can you do about it? It's a federal program. You have to follow the federal guidelines. One of the things that should be in there, if it's not in there, is if you're offered employment or if your job calls and says come back to work and you refuse, you should lose your unemployment. That would be how you would fix that. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, believe it or not, we've flown through the questions fairly quickly tonight. It may seem quick on our side. We're not the ones up there having to answer the questions. But we're actually down to the final questions submitted by the general public. So, Mr. Hildebrand, you will answer first this time. With the state potentially facing a $1.4 billion deficit for fiscal year 2022, what are some of the things you would propose to address this deficit? With the state potentially facing a $1.4 billion deficit by the fiscal year 2022, what are some of the things you propose to address this deficit? 2 minutes.
Thank you, Blake. Well, whichever one of us goes up there, we are going to have a very, very tough job, along with all the other legislatures and the governor, on figuring out how you're going to fill a gap of $1.4 billion. But the first thing you do what you do at home. You sit down, you prioritize. What do we have to do? What are we going to do? What is the most important issues that we have to do? Unfortunately, you're not going to raise taxes enough to collect $1.4 billion, and you're going to try to saddle these businesses that are shut down, these people that are unemployed, with higher taxes. That's not the answer. You can't tax them to collect that. You need people back to work. You need businesses back open. You start taxing them even higher, they're not going to open back up. We need businesses to open back up. So how are you going to cut the budget? It's hard. 62% of the budget goes to K through 12 and higher ed. 27% goes to our public human services. Our budget is $8 billion. Our SGF is $8 billion. We're going to lose 21% of our budget. We have a lot of tough cuts to head, but we're going to have to make them and do them to where we are prioritized, where it's going to have the least impact, but we'll have the biggest rebound when we come out of it, when finances are back up and going good. One of the other things that we need to do is look at things like dues that all of our departments pay. We pay dues into organizations, trips. We shouldn't pay for that while we're facing a $1.4 billion. Look at things like that. Make sure we're not paying for those and prioritize our spending.
Thank you. Ms. Engel, same question, 2 minutes.
Well, I agree to a certain extent. There's going to be some really hard decisions that have to be made. And the one thing I would not do is, where some states do, is they peanut butter it. Everyone takes a 2% hit. You can't do that. You've got to do the hard decisions, what goes where, and everything. But I think we also need to take another look at our tax code and see where there's some loopholes, like the corporate tuition tax, where people can contribute unlimited amount of money to a private school and get a 70% write-off on their taxes. That's fine, but if they can do that, then they can contribute also to the public education. I believe that we have to look at some other revenues, but I would, until we looked at the tax code, I would also like to look at maybe a fourth bracket of taxes for maybe the higher income people, not on the backs of the unemployed and the small business peoples that's operating here in southeast Kansas, but a fourth bracket that adjusts a little bit more of the taxes to the higher levels of the tax code of income. But it's not going to be easy. No one, I don't think anyone that goes to Topeka should believe that there's going to be a magic rabbit that you can pull out of the hat.
No easy answers. I understand. All right, we will now close with 2 minutes of closing statements. And Ms. Engel, you will give your closing statement first.
Okay. It's been a privilege to be here this evening. It really has. And I'm running because I believe I bring a lot of different experiences to the table, and because I want to serve. I don't want to be a state senator for any particular group. I want to be there for everyone. I want to represent the Democrats, the Republicans, the Independents, the Libertarians. I want to represent the people that don't even register and vote. We all need to listen to these folks and take heart in what their problems are. And we need to put that into motion. So I want to be, someone asked me, why don't you have Democrat on your card? And I said, because I'm not running to represent the Democrats. I'm running to represent everyone. So I appreciate your support. I ask you for your vote on November 3rd. If you want to know more about me, Nancy Engel for state, and I always have to say, Nancy Engel, that's Engel with an I, for statesenate.com. And you can get to my Facebook from there also, and you can learn a lot more about me on the website. You can also find my email there, and if you have any questions that haven't been covered tonight, please fire them off, and I'll get back with you personally.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Engel. Mr. Hildebrand, your 2 minutes closing statement.
Thank you. And again, thank you everybody for bearing with us as we talk about our accomplishments or things that we want to do. I think there was a stark difference between myself and my opponent, so you have an opportunity to choose. Which path do we want to take? You can take the path that's going to raise your taxes, vote for budgets that are deficit spending again, and not be fiscally responsible, or we can finally take care of business, get down like we do at our kitchen table when we're discussing our finances, say this is what we've got coming in, this is what we can spend going out. That's something we have to do at the state. It doesn't ever happen, never happened since I've been up there, and probably hasn't happened since the government has formed, but it's something that should happen. So again, thank you for showing up, and I look forward to your support on November 3rd. Thank you.
Okay. I hope our audience members will give our candidates a round of applause. Thank you again, both for your time tonight, your willingness to share your views, and for your willingness to serve the residents of District 13. Again, thank you to the City of Pittsburgh for allowing us to hold this event here, and with that, we'll wish everybody a good evening.
Thank you, Blake.
Thanks, Blake.